This interview is a part of the Oklahoma Historical Society's Oral History Program, Living Legends Collection. The original date for this interview is September the 13th, 1972. This interview was conducted by Mr. Neil Tuohy. The interviewee is Mr. Ray P. Elledge. That's Elledge, Elledge of Blackwell, Oklahoma. This interview is being re-recorded on the 16th of October, 1985 for inclusion in the permanent collections of the Oral History Program by Judith Michener.
I'm, this is September 13th, 1972, and we're at Blackwell, Oklahoma, and I'm Neil Tuohy, and I've come up here to interview for the Oklahoma Christian College, Living Legends, and we're at Blackwell to do some interviews on some of the pioneers that grew up in this area. And I have here Mr. Ray P. Elledge, and he's going to tell you some of his experiences while living here over the many years. Mr. Elledge, could you tell us some of your early days recollections?
Well, is that all right? Talk right nice, I guess. Oh. I was born in Pike County, Illinois, a little old town of Perry, near our home. My grandfather owned the farm we lived on at that time. In a few years, he passed away, and my father got a hold of the farm. And we lived on that farm until I was 18 or 19 years old. My father came to Oklahoma on an excursion of possible landowners and bought the farm out here, and we moved out in the spring of 1907. Of course, when we were there, I went to school in this little old country school. Was very small. And then we went to the high school in Perry, which is the little old inland town we're talking about where I was born. Went through high school there, then came to Oklahoma and went to Stillwater and took the short course there, which was very interesting and financially. Took ROTC also, and a lot of them didn't like that, but I enjoyed it. When the term was over, we got an honorable discharge, and I still have that in my possession. Of course, when we were there, the mode of farming had changed from the horse and buggy days to the small tractors, and they're very small and not very much power to them at that time, but later on, as the time went on, they switched over mostly from row crop to wheat. And we raised lots of wheat and still put that in with horses for a few years till we owned a tractor. And then we kept raising wheat and then adding a few acres every year. And then the wheat program came up, and every year that I had wheat that I took to market, I took a loan on it. Finally then, of course, if you don't pay off, it reverts back to the government. I remember when I first came down here, it might be interesting to some of you to know that they had the fair, which I've been associated with for over 20 years. And I went through as a board member, as a overseer of the livestock, especially cattle. But for those years, way on back, I don't know, probably 8 or 9, they had the fair down farther east part of town, Blackwell.
Is that the K County Fair?
It was Cape County, still is. Yeah. In those days, we had horse races, and about not as large a fair as we have today. I think we have one of about the best in the state for a county fair. But last year I retired, and some other people taking over my work. But I have been associated with it for that many years. And also my wife does the same thing. We help year after year after year. It means a lot of work to get ready for the fair, and after it's over, it takes some much work to get cleaned up after it. Oh, I had my brother-in-law's with me, and he was here in the opening strip. He will get that on some of the tape, I guess. I don't know where I'll stop. Yeah. Think about these things at the right time, you know. Well, the fair below, when they used to have that, they had horse races. And had great crowds and a lot of fun. In fact, I had a partner of mine run a hack from the fairground uptown, from the busy part of the fair, and one evening I know it had come a big rain. This draw where they couldn't get across, they had to ride over. So it made pretty good that evening. But on the old smelter, what has been here for a long time, was started to be built shortly after my wife was married, and I've been near it all these years, but never did work there. I was always busy on the farm. Then I have my family have one boy in Oklahoma City, Art, and he's with the MacGyver engineering firm and had been with them for several years, and that has to do with the oil production. One boy that's not able had to retire as a mail carrier, and he lives retired and lives at Grove over at the lake. And my baby daughter, baby of the family, lived down Matonqua on a farm. She has 2 children, and she has each child, one of her children has one little boy, and the other one has a boy and a girl. I have several great-grandchildren, and when it comes to that, it makes you think you might be getting a little older than you used to be. I'd get back a little bit on the way we used to farm and how we had to do with our wheat. Cut it, bind it, chalk it, haul it in, thrash it. That meant a lot of work. Now they're one man rent more ground, has to have bigger machinery. They're big, and the machinery is so large now that they can't get through a lot of the bridges on the highway. I don't know what'll come next. Should have I've been associated with the fair so long, this time all I can do is sit around and listen and maybe give a little suggestions and maybe take some. But we've got quite a nice group of cattle, especially in the dairy breeds. And we've got some nice dairy cattle. But I always have raised some cattle and had a lot of hogs. But my got some rheumatism or arthritis in my knees, and I had to sell all my stock because I wasn't able to take care of them. And that part of the time before I had to sell them, before I did sell them, my wife helped me with the chores. That's how we got them done. But Blackwell has had a lot of fairs, and all of them are good, and I think they're getting better. But our grounds need some facelifting. Well, I forgot to mention my wife, and I wouldn't want to make her sore, so we've been married soon be 60 years, were living on the same farm, all except about 5 years of that time. And it's the farm that her father took in the run. When she was 2 years old is when they made the run, and she was brought down to Oklahoma with the rest of the family when they moved down. And when we were married, we lived on another farm for, I think, 3 years. Then they moved up on this one, been down there ever since. So it kind of seemed like home to her as well as to me. There's so many things to tell about in the early days that happened, and sometimes you wonder and get to thinking how I got through it. Had a runaway one time. I'd bought a fancy horse, and it's when they put up a airplane once in a while, not often, but one was going to be taken up at Blackwell at a certain hour. And when they blew the whistle for everybody to go out to see it go up, our horse got scared, or somebody ran the buggy, and she ran off. And both of us landed in the street, and she went on out, left the buggy sitting along the side of the road, and she didn't come to till nearly midnight, and I about broke my back. So that's one of the historical things. But before that, back on the old fairground, kids would gather there, especially every Sunday afternoon, and some of us had buggies, some didn't, and we rode around the racetrack and had a lot of fun. In those days, people made their own fun, and I think we were happier then and got along better in the world than we're getting along today with all the crime and corruption we have.
What? I don't believe you said what year you were married.
Oh, we were married in 1912, December the 4th. Of course, that's when our 60th wedding anniversary will come up. I don't know whether we'll celebrate or not yet. Well, I'll think of something later on. I don't know. I would like to switch back to some of my school days. After I got into high school, I walked a lot of the time 3 miles to school and 3 miles home. And quite a bit of the time I stayed with my uncle, which was a doctor, and he of course worked horses those days, drove horses. I would take care of his horses for him. Sometimes he'd get in very late at night, maybe get a call to go again in a little while with changing horses and on the way again. But I got all my high school education there and graduated in this little old town near where I was born, till we moved out to Oklahoma. And it came out, mother and my sister and myself came out on the train. My father and brother came on with the car. Brought the horses, was located on the home place when we arrived on a passenger train. In those days we had several passenger trains. Today we don't have any. So they could date back to the cars and trucks. And of course, those days probably be better, and the longer we go, the bigger it gets, and less men. One man does the work of what it used to be, and one man feeds several families today, which he didn't used to feed over 3 or 4. I don't know what's coming to.
Farms were a lot smaller in those days.
Yeah. Of course, cars then were mostly Fords. Once in a while, anybody was rich enough to have a bigger car, some of them Buicks, and they made much noise, the tractor machine going down the street. We had one fellow had one of them, and he didn't hear. He couldn't hear anything himself, and he thought that everybody was interested in his car because they'd all look at him. Well, they're looking through the glass there. Maybe you better quit.
Well, this is Neil Tuohy, and I'm signing off up at Blackwell, Oklahoma.